You have opened Drave's archives. This entry begins as many disastrous entries do, with something the crew first called a glitch. That was the smallest name they could find for it, and for a little while the smallest name was enough. At first, it was only static. That matters. If it had arrived already carrying a voice, already shaped into language, someone aboard the Calyx Dawn might have had the sense to fear it early. But static is patient. It enters a ship's life the way dust enters machinery, not as threat, as nuisance, a soft disruption, a background irritation, a minor blemish in the smooth running confidence of people who believe their instruments still fully belong to them. The Calyx Dawn was 3 weeks deep into Lost Sector E when the first anomaly arrived. Not near a station, not along any active route, not near enough to recognize salvage lanes for human error, to feel like a satisfying explanation. They were surveying the debris field around a collapsed star. A collapsed star is not merely an object, it is aftermath made astronomical. The sector was full of dust lit by nothing kind, fragments of old rock, strips of dead alloy, ghost reflections from wreckage too distant to identify before the ship had already drifted past. At its center sat the neutron remnant, small, if judged by sight alone, dense enough to distort the confidence of anything that approached it, thinking that size still meant proportion. The crew logged the anomaly, flagged it, complained about it. A rogue ping, a dying echo, some remnant loop caught in the debris wake of an old collapse and repeating itself because no one remained alive to tell it to stop. That was the working theory for the first 6 hours. Then the signal came again, exactly 6 hours later. Not approximately, exactly. That is when nuisance became pattern, and pattern in the wrong sector is where dread first begins to stand upright. A repeating signal out near a dead star is not by itself a supernatural event. It is only unusual, but repetition is rarely neutral. A thing that returns a perfect interval is making a claim. The Calyx Dawn reoriented its arrays, ran sweep differentials, checked for reflection loops. None of the usual causes held for long. The signal was too clean in the wrong places and too damaged in the right ones. The static had shape. At 12 hours, the static developed tones. At 18, rhythm. At 24, words. Not machine speech, not synthesis. Human. Soft, measured, calm in a way that immediately made everyone more afraid than panic would have, because panic at least respects context. The voice did not. It entered the ship's speakers with the impossible familiarity of something already certain it belonged there. And when the AI finished its voice print analysis, the room went silent. The match returned, clean enough to be obscene. Captain Ilian Hearth. Former command, Calyx Registry, Lost Sector E Expedition Lead, declared dead 9 years earlier. His last mission had vanished in the very same sector now holding the signal. A neutron collapse, a relay failure. No survivors, no remains, no meaningful debris. For 9 years, Captain Hearth had been dead in the official language that makes institutions feel safe about distance. Then his voice came back on schedule every 6 hours from the dark around a dead star, and spoke as if no time at all had passed. That was what unsettled them most. Not the voice print, not the location. It was the present tense of his speaking. The first clear phrases were simple that made them worse. I am here. Send them. I see you. Present tense. That small grammatical choice did more damage to the room than any scream would have. The crew debated protocol. Standard procedure was clear enough. Mark, log, retreat. All excellent procedures, all perfectly written for crews not yet standing inside the pressure field of direct impossibility. Because once Hearth's voice began using present tense, the anomaly stopped feeling like an object. It became a relationship. The ship AI offered no satisfying conclusion. The voice was human, the location was real. The origin point did not obey any model the Dawn could process without admitting that the ordinary language of transmission, distance, and persistence was no longer sufficient. So they compromised, which is to say, they made the possible choice in a way everyone could agree felt responsible. They traced the origin. The signal came from a lightless rift orbiting the neutron core. Not near it, orbiting. The rift did not look like much, just a dark fold in the field around the core. A place where light did not vanish dramatically, only stopped behaving as though it trusted its own direction. The visual feed kept slipping on it. Edges refusing to stay edges, depth altering depending on who was looking. They sent a probe. The probe launched cleanly, trajectory stable, telemetry active. It crossed the measured distance to the rift in under 7 minutes. Then it returned instantly. No turn. No recorded reversal. One moment outbound. Next moment, back in retrieval range as though the space between leaving and returning had been edited. The onboard data was empty, not corrupted, absent. Only one new thing had appeared. A sentence etched into the casing. Do not bury the voice. That was the first moment everyone aboard became complicit in the same understanding. The anomaly was no longer transmitting blindly. It was answering. Contamination did not begin dramatically, but 36 hours after the probe returned, the first crew member reported hearing Hearth's voice outside the comm grid. He heard it in the ship itself, along the metal. Whispers along the metal. Then came the dreams. People woke exhausted from sleep that had not really been sleep, but something close to someone else's insistence of sleeping. One drew constellations, but she had never studied the charts. Another crewman was found mid-sleep with one hand already on an airlock release. No one died then. That detail matters. This one was subtler. It wanted participation, not panic. The voice continued every 6 hours. Then between cycles, people began hearing their own names where no one had spoken them. Small phrases inside the vibration of pipes, breathing that matched their own with a half-beat delay when standing alone. The mission was aborted. The Dawn turned back, prepared jump routes, closed non-essential channels, locked sections. All the proper actions were taken, but all were taken far, far too late, because the signal did not stay behind. They jumped once. The signal returned. They jumped again. It returned sooner. That was when distance stopped meaning what they needed it to mean. The crew logs became thinner here, because language began to lose confidence in its own usefulness. Audio fragments overlap, routine reports drift into weather descriptions for locations the ship had never visited. One officer ends a diagnostic describing a shoreline without stars where black water moves in geometric tides. The signal grew clearer with each jump, not louder, but closer. The crew stopped sleeping, then stopped trusting wakefulness either. And in all of it, Captain Harth's voice remained patient. Not rage, not pleading. Patience. As though all this had happened before, as though the crew was not being hunted, so much as introduced to a process already quite certain of its eventual result. The first report that the voice had changed was almost dismissed. Then everyone reported it. It was not Hearth anymore. The voice they were hearing now had broadened. It carried more than one tone, more than one grain of breath, more than one internal weather. Then it resolved into something worse. Then a chorus. It became them. Every crew member speaking in unison. The signal did not just wear their voices, it used them, as though each had always been a component waiting to be arranged into a larger instrument. They described places that do not exist. Not yet, anyway. That was what the signal wanted. Not contact, not rescue. It wanted continuation. A widening, a gathering, a way for voices once separated by body, identity, and chronology to become available to something patient enough to treat individuality as temporary scaffolding. That is when the Calyx Dawn stopped being a vessel and became, in all useful senses, a relay. Their last known position was one sector out from Earth. Close enough for rescue to sound possible. The final signal log is damaged, not beyond reading. Damaged in the way a page becomes damaged when too many truths are pressed into it from incompatible directions. The last minute is nearly all overlap. Voices, systems, a low carrier pulse beneath both, and then where sense gives out, one word remains legible. Remember. Maybe memory itself was a vector all along, because if the anomaly requires remembrance rather than mere reception, then every retelling is already part of it. Every archive, every recovered log, every careful voice narrating the fate of the Calyx Dawn, under the assumption that distance and description still count as separation. Most people think a signal is a message. That is a terrestrial idea, comforting, linear. However, out there, near collapsed stars and rifts that orbit absence, a signal may be something else entirely. Not communication, but migration. A way for pattern to leave one condition and enter another. A method of crossing that does not require a body to remain intact so long as the shape of the voice can still be carried. Captain Ilian Hearth may have died 9 years before the Calyx Dawn heard him again. That can remain true and still fail to protect anyone from what followed. Because death, in the ordinary human sense, may only mark the point at which one form of containment ends and another begins. If so, the rift around the dead star was never simply a location. It was something else. It was a place where voice stops referring to person and begins referring to persistence. The Calyx Dawn was never recovered. Only the logs, the probe casing, the repeating interval, the one surviving word, and the fact that Lost Sector E remains marked as not merely hazardous, but unresolved. Hazards can be measured, but unresolved things continue working until after the file is fully closed. Somewhere beyond the routes still considered worth naming, a dead star holds its impossible companion in slow black orbit. And every 6 hours, if the old intervals still mean what they once meant, something in that dark continues to speak. Not because it is lost, because it is still in the act of finding listeners. What matters is that the signal remained undispersed. A voice or a choir or a pattern still searching for vessels large enough to remember properly. The dead star does not shine. That much is certain. But perhaps shining was never the point. Some stars die into silence. Some, it seems, die and become a signal. And not all voices fade within the light that once contained them. Some remain to be heard. The archives close for now. Hey y'all, I hope you enjoyed that one. It was titled The Signal from the Dead Star. It was a bit of a weird one, I will admit. I tried to go for a creepy sci-fi-ish vibe, but I don't know if I executed it very well. If I did, let me know. If I could do more work on it, let me know again so I can improve for the future ones, because I am interested in sci-fi creepy ones as well. But yeah, it was just a weird one. There are some grammar errors in there, but this was also a script that was a while ago that I just barely touched, and I haven't really fixed it much, and I just thought I'd put it out here just because why the hell not. But anyways, the next one I believe is also going to be a slightly creepy one, but it's not going to be sci-fi. It's most likely going to be dark fantasy as well. But yeah. Anyways, if there's any topics you guys would like me to maybe, or genres you would like me to touch on for future videos, let me know in the comments. And yeah, if you like this, like, comment, subscribe. There should be a video in the outro on the end screen pointing to the playlist as well as the previous story that I said. So anyways, have a nice day. Thanks for listening, and the archives will be closing for now. Bye-bye.